Okay, JP with the Flipform Thinktank here today with a dear friend, Heather Eisele. Thank you for joining us today, Heather. We are in the magical town of Thetford Mines in Quebec, Canada, for a friend's wedding, and it's going to be a great day. Heather, thank you for taking some time to do a podcast with me here. You want to tell the viewers about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy to actually be sitting here
In
with
person?
with my friend. Yeah, so it is rather beautiful here. I'm Heather Eisele, longtime consultant, and a principal consultant at Caylent currently. However, I could see a day where I would like to do what you're doing, JP. So I have set up a lot of the really basic structures for my company, Arwen Enterprises, and I'd love to know what the next steps are. You know, as I prepare myself for that phase of my career,
Right.
I just kind of wanted to bounce a bunch of ideas off of you and get your advice.
Let's do it. Yeah. So I think, backstory, we've talked about this a lot. This is not the first time we've talked about this,
No.
right? So we've talked from basic inception of the idea, because you're doing a coaching business.
That's
right?
it.
That's what you want to do. And so we've talked through business setup. So you've got your entity set up. You've got all of that going for you. You have a direction, I think.
Yeah.
The direction could change, but
Yeah.
that's kind of where you are right now. So where do you want to go from here?
So I think, right now I do a lot of, cloud executive level kind of strategy. I would like to take that and get more concentrated with specific clients.
Okay.
So some of the questions in my mind are things like, how do you find those clients? How do you know what the structure is? How do you build the contracts to kind of enable those engagements?
Gotcha.
It's really kind of like those next practical tactical steps,
right? Yeah, there are a lot of things there, right? So I think the first thing where you find clients are just really your old relationships, right? One of the things when you get into building your own business is getting back into your network and redeveloping those old relationships where you performed really well and you had a lot of traction and you added a lot of value, those kinds of things, right? In our world in consulting, there's always the non-competes and stuff like that.
Sure.
So you'll have to wait for that. But I think your coaching business it doesn't directly compete with what you're doing now as a consultant, right?
For sure.
And insofar as that you could even do some of this coaching out like at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
And I have, right?
Yeah.
Like, so really small, like I would say my superpower is really agility, right? Like, and making it practical. So, especially at the enterprise scale, which is sometimes really hard because it's a slightly different language. And you have to be thinking, kind of plans within plans within plans within plans.
Right.
Not to get too Dune on you.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, no, okay. So let's, as you know, for those who are watching who may not know a lot about agility, right? Talk about that a little bit. Like,
Sure.
Why would somebody need a coach like you? And why is agility impactful for somebody's business?
Well, that's a good question because everybody does Agile, right? Quote unquote. Everybody's got a brand of Agile that they're used to, that they've seen. A lot of times they've seen it done poorly, or they've seen it get either too big and heavy or too rote. Like, this is just the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes an outside voice to come in and see where there are inconsistencies in process, or where there is, I don't know, maybe there's always more that could be fine-tuned. And if you've been rolling a certain way for a really long time, you may not even know that there's stuff out there.
Right.
So some of those things it's just like any other process. There's always development. There's always new techniques and things like that. And that's one of the cool things I think about being a consultant, is that you get to kind of go out into the world and find the best of breed things,
right,
and bring them back and kind of spread that wealth among your clients.
Yeah.
So that's really the part of consulting that I love the best. But I think that you also, what I've discovered in my journey with helping clients discover agility, or up their game, is that a lot of people think they know how it's done, and they've never seen it done really well, to the point where it's impacting those bottom line things at the executive level. It's all, the powers at the team level, which is absolutely where it should be, but sometimes that can decrease the visibility at the executive level. So understanding how agility naturally does that, if it's done really well, I think is where companies who start Agile and then want to be able to have their CEO standing on a stage on January 1st saying, and here is a thing, right?
Right.
Have you ever had that as a consultant? They're like, hey, we have to have our CEO on the stage January 1st and they're going to talk about this thing.
Yeah.
How are we going to know? Well, we don't know because it's Agile. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're
I've
never
heard that
gonna know
excuse
a
before.
date
Yeah.
because it's Agile. That's completely untrue, right? It's wildly untrue. So, so really it's just about, that stronger communication, how you use appropriate technology to enable those conversations. And then, it sometimes, like I said, just takes an outside set of eyes to see it.
So then, taking that one step further, if you look at your business and you're looking to help people, I guess, adopt Agile in the proper way, or even give them insight into how other people do it, right? Because a lot of the value that we add, a lot of the value that you add, is that, we've seen lots of clients doing Agile in different ways. You've seen lots of clients in Agile doing different things. And, the wisdom that you can bring to somebody is that I've seen people try to do it your way. I've seen people try to do it a different way. I've seen people try to do it a way that you're proposing. And here's what works and here's what doesn't. And here's what you're not thinking about, right? So I say all that to ask you, like, who would your target client be? Right? Are you looking for somebody at the CTO level, operations, CFO, CEO, that suite, like the C-suite level, to advise them in your coaching business to say, hey, this is how you Agile.
Right. This is how to Agile.
Right.
I would say that it's a little bit of everything, because if you're only focused on the team level or you're only focused on the executive level, you're going to miss stuff.
Sure.
So if you really want to affect organizational level change, it really needs to be everything in between. So my approach is I like to start with the executive and say, what are you trying to accomplish, right? What are your big business objectives? Where do you intrinsically know that there's a problem? Because they always know. They always know that, there's just something wrong. We keep missing deadlines, or we keep, this crashed a production something when we released it. There's something wrong. They understand the symptom. They understand that they love their people and they don't want to mess up their flow. Okay. So that's usually the executive is acting with good intention.
Right.
And usually the team member is down there, they're working hard. They're trying to do all the things within the constraints that they're given, because always there's bureaucracy built around process.
Right.
So, and some of those things may be getting in people's way, but they don't know how to effect change. And without the ear of the executive, those things never change.
Correct.
So I think that you have to be able to embed with all of the different levels. And that's where I see the greatest impact. So understanding the high level, what is the business problem you're trying to solve, right? And this doesn't have to just be one thing. It can be a series of things, right? We want to decrease the cost of our deliveries. We want to speed up, how fast we can get stuff out the door.
Right.
And there will be technology pieces of that, and there will be process pieces of that.
Yeah.
So if we focus on the business problem and then we try to measure the value out of the engagement. So if we increase your release speed by, I don't know, let's say we decrease the amount of time it takes to get a production release out the door by a week. Is that valuable?
Right.
Well, how much money does that save you? How much money does that make you? Right. So helping the executive quantify that is the first step, I think.
Yeah.
And then going through, your entire Agile organization and figuring out where the breaks are, where is something stuck, and then coaching to that. And then along the way, better process just kind of evolves. So let's say the problem is funding, right? Until you hit this milestone, you don't get this piece of money to hire the consultants that you need to do the technical thing, right? So that can often be a problem that is outside the actual development team. And if the executive doesn't know that there's a process problem there,
right?
And so you have to get the entire organization on board. And I think a lot of companies get really myopic about it being the technical team's problem.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So really,
it's long-winded answer.
No, it's okay though. But it's like the holistic picture, right? You start at the top. That's kind of where your ideal start position is, and then really, it's as you dig in, you're trickling down to the rest of the teams.
Yeah, right. Like I've got a rash here. Well, we could put a cream on that, or we could figure out why you have a rash.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. So in a nutshell, that's your business. That's your target client. That's
the
what
plan.
you're after.
It's my favorite thing in the world to do.
Yeah. So now you have a business, you have an LLC, you've got all that figured out.
Got it figured out.
Now
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, of course. Now you have questions.
Now I have questions.
Where do you want to start?
Okay. So if I were going to tailor that type of engagement, so mainly in my early career, I dealt with, small and medium-sized businesses. Lately, it's more executive. I like them all. Do I need to kind of narrow down my scope as to like the perfect client?
I don't think so yet. Right. I heard somebody say you want to say yes to a lot of people until you can't say yes to everybody anymore. And then you're going to have a lot of no's, as you start to figure out where your niche is.
Yeah.
Right. Then you're going to really start to refuse a lot of people. So going back to, I guess, the very first question is, how do you find people? Well, you dig into your network and you tell this story that you just told, right? And you'll have the long version, which we just had, or the short version, and the medium version and all that stuff, right? And you'll start to tell people just what you're doing. And this is where I'm going next, and, all that whole thing. And people who need your services will naturally ask you more questions. And if you follow up with those questions and you figure out, right? I think one of the things you need to really nail down is what your pricing structure is going to be, which is a difficult thing, right? The good part is that we're both in consulting and we both have insight into what pricing should be, right? I would mirror it in a lot of ways, right?
That's an easy button.
Yeah. Well, I think though, because a lot of times when people go independent, you have a tendency to try to undercut yourself, like at your normal rate. And I can tell you that when I did that, because I've done that, right? When I tried to undercut my rate, I didn't get any business. And it wasn't really till I came up to market rate, and said, okay, well, I'm at least playing in this strata, right? Because what people will see in procurement departments, more on small side than on the large business side, but on the, small to medium sized business, they'll say, okay, well, JP's charging, or Heather's charging, say $250 an hour. JP's charging $150 an hour. JP must suck. Right? There's a reason why he's only charging $150 an hour, So then it's kind of like this backwards logic that people will give you more credence just by looking at it. And then say, okay, well, why is Heather charging $250? What does she bring to the table that, other people
She must be amazing.
She must be great.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's how people, a lot of times they'll communicate either their demand or their worth.
Yeah.
So I would at least start at your pricing, wherever, because naturally you're charging a client through your employer,
exactly,
whatever your rate is, whatever your day rate is. I would start there, right?
That's a really good starting point.
And if people get really queasy about the rate, then you can do things where you say, okay, well, let me do this part of the assessment for free or whatever. I'll give you so much for free, but you never change your rate because you want to anchor them at the rate. You don't want to necessarily start giving discounts.
That makes sense.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So your rate's always your rate. And then later, if they say, okay, well, we're running out of budget, we can't do this, we need to decrease your whatever. It's like, okay, well, my rate's the same. You're just paying for less time. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you always try to hold on to what your rate is. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So
that seems really intuitive now that you say it.
Yeah. So your rate is your rate, and so now you're starting to have these discussions with your network and saying, hey, okay, this is whatever. They're inevitably going to get to, well, how much do you cost? Well, this is how much I cost. And then they're just going to hem and haw, or they're going to want to, going to move forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So then the next step is, or the next thing you have to have ready is statement of work, right? And look, you've seen a statement of work. I've seen a statement of work.
Some are great, some are awful.
A million.
Yeah.
What I would say is, here's where you got to spend some money, find a lawyer. You know what the good parts of it is, right? Just have the lawyer put it into legalese. So you have this template statement of work. You can go around and say, okay, boom, here's my stuff. If you want to do something, you fill it out, right? You make it tailored to you, but at the same time, you want somebody protecting you, right?
Do you bother with an MSA, a master service agreement?
Sometimes you will.
Yeah. If you're
Sometimes
consulting more than one person in the org?
it depends.
Okay.
It depends on the size. A lot of times a larger organization, they'll want to do an MSA. And so you have that in place. I mean, I would prep your lawyer to say, hey, we may want to do this at some point. I wouldn't pay for it until you need it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, because sometimes small to medium size, the SOW is good enough to get in, and then you can extend with
change orders and
exactly. Yeah. And you can do that for years, and then you hold that rate, right? Going back to holding the rate, because as soon as somebody's going to want to go MSA, they're going to want to lean on you for the rate. Right. So that's what they're going to do.
That's
they're going,
clever.
okay, we're going to sign, we want you to sign this MSA. What's your bottom line rate? It's like, no, this is my bottom line rate. It's like, no, naturally they're going to want to eat into that rate because they want to have the service agreement. We want you for a very long period of time. We want you at a better rate than what you're charging.
Got it.
So maybe not, but be ready for that because, when the bigs, right? Somebody that's, that's ranked on the Fortune level rankings, they're generally going to have procurement departments that are incentivized on price cutting. Right.
That makes sense.
So just be ready for that. Now, sometimes you will also, and I'm doing this now, I have to go through a third party, and they deal with the MSA. And then so I'll negotiate my rate with them.
Yes.
And then they have their own MSA rate, so it's like a double negotiation. But
do your clients find that appealing to go through the third party?
No. But when you have clients that are very large, it's necessary, right? Because they don't want to deal with
so many vendors.
Yes. They want to deal with 10 vendors. They don't want to deal with 100 vendors, right? So when you come in as an independent to, somebody that has revenues over $5 billion or something like that,
right?
They don't want to deal with, they don't have time to deal with that.
I wouldn't want to do it either. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So sometimes you'll have to go through that, and that's kind of a different thing, but then at least you don't have to deal with their complete group of lawyers leaning on you on your MSA.
Yeah.
They have somebody else to do that for you. So point is, I would have it in my back pocket.
Yeah.
I wouldn't pay for it until you needed it. So I would statement of work you'll need.
Yeah.
You'll want your lawyer to turn that around, relatively quick. As you're in the process, in the sales process, you're going to get to a point where it's going to go to contract.
Exactly.
And then once you're getting there, then you're on the phone with your lawyer. Hey, I need the statement of work drawn up. Whatever, and it's going to cost.
Here's our standard. Here's the bit that goes in the middle.
Yeah, and it's going to cost you $1,000 or something like that. And then they'll hand it to you. Then you fill in all the details, and then you pass it on, right? Yeah. The other thing that I'll say then is they're going to probably have their lawyers look at it, send back some revisions.
Red lines, yeah.
Yeah. So then don't do anything yourself. Give it to the lawyer. There are a few things that I'll tell you that you have to pay for. That's one of the things.
Lawyer,
right?
Lawyer and CPA.
Correct.
Yeah.
Lawyer and CPA. Those are the ones. So, but yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it leads into another question.
Okay.
So you were talking about don't reduce your rates, but reduce the time that you give them, right? We don't have this much budget. We have this much budget.
Right.
Great. You get this many hours now, right? How does that impact you? Do you prefer to have one big client or 10 little clients or, what? Because I'm a mom, I've got kids, all the things, right? My cats have very expensive taste in cat food.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
So question is for that security factor, right? How do you feel about, putting it all on black?
I'm kind of a equal opportunity taker in that case. I'm not yet to the point where I have to say no to a lot of people yet.
That's
you know
good.
what I'm saying?
That's
so
good.
Any and all comers, but my rate is my rate.
Yes.
Right? So I've been lucky and fortunate enough to have signed long-term contracts. So 6-month, year plus.
Sure.
So I've been lucky in that regard, but I always keep it open because you never know. I mean, even with those contracts, budgets could get cut and
For sure.
So from a security, like a peace of mind financial standpoint, you always have to keep that that door open. You've got to be networking all the time,
Yeah.
where the next gigs are. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you'll get into a pitch and say, well, I don't necessarily have bandwidth for that right now, but, if you really want to keep going, I'll keep you posted. And if, whenever I free up, or if I bring somebody on, then,
have you been willing to go above, like you've got a set amount of work in your mind, right? And you don't want to shortchange any given client, clearly.
Correct.
Have you ever gone to the point where you are working more than you're comfortable with?
No,
Not yet.
no. But my, the nature of it makes it such that I probably work more than I would as a W-2 employee.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because a lot of times for me, whenever I meet clients and I make a relationship, we sign a contract, I have a personal relationship.
Exactly.
It becomes it's much more than transactional, where a lot of times in a consulting firm, it can, you try to make it as personal as possible, but it's generally transactional, particularly in cloud business, when you're doing, whatever, you're just initial setup and whatever. It's you're in, you're out, 6 weeks, boom,
Right.
you're gone.
Right.
It's hard to develop deep relationships in that way. But when you're, and you probably know this, when you start the sales cycle with them, that sales cycle starts way before that 6-week engagement, right? And so your sales, your marketing, your everything, you've developed this long-term relationship already.
Yeah.
For me, what happens is I probably take it more personal than I should, but I'll take it personal, right? And if I tell a person that I'm going to do something for them,
I'm
going to do that thing for them.
I have a hard time not getting involved with the clients, when especially when they really need something, and it's so hard to watch somebody who's become a friend struggle.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's okay, and I think that's part of the indie touch, right? Okay. That you hey, I provide you a level of service that you can't get with a big,
right?
Right. And exactly what you're getting with me, and I'm going to bat for you, and I'm all of this stuff. And I think that's just part of it. I think it's okay. Yeah. I think that the hardest part is having the personal boundaries, right? Where it gets too much. And so trying to not overload yourself. I mean, that's a balance. I don't have any great rules to tell you, other than the one thing I do is I have 2 cell phones, right?
That's smart.
And so this is the work cell phone. And then if I need to be off limits, it's off.
Yeah.
Right. And it's completely off. And if we're in, if my daughter has a play, or she's, my son has a thing, then this is off. Off time is off time, right?
Yeah.
So just like we did when we worked together at Annika, you try to honor your people's PTO.
That's right.
It's the same thing. You have to protect yourself too, right?
It's harder though. Don't you find that's harder?
It is. It is because you feel that thing. But at the same time, what you'll find is that as you get into delivering, you'll find places where you feel like you're going to burn out. Mm-hmm. And when you start to feel that, where you're just running around, chasing your own tail kind of thing, a lot of it is okay, you've been burning yourself a little bit too hard.
Yeah.
And then when you, give yourself a weekend off, and it's no, the weekend starts at 5 p.m. Friday, and it doesn't start again until, work doesn't start again Monday, 8 a.m. or whatever.
Right.
And then you have to give yourself it's almost it almost feels like a punishment in a way. You turn off your phone, you turn off your, your laptop, and then it's okay, Katie, don't let, here's the power cords. Don't let me touch this.
Right.
I need to be engaged in something else. I need to not be doing work for, 48 hours.
I find I do better work when I give myself time boxes.
Yeah.
Right. Just like, if you're doing a, what's the story called where there aren't points? It's,
Come on.
like a spike.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a spike and you've got to do some research, and it's not necessarily amount of risk or effort or anything like that. So you can't really give it story points, but those must be time boxed. Right. I find if I give myself with the tasks a time box to get it done, I focus better.
Yeah.
First of all. And I make sure that I'm not interrupted when I'm doing it. Because the work from home thing is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's so good. I get to get up and make breakfast for my kids every day, which is not terrible.
Yeah.
But it's easy to get sucked out into that world unless I give myself time boxes. It's like being in an office.
Right. It's hard to have boundaries at home.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
but it's also hard to have boundaries with the clients. So it's Yeah, it's tricky. So I need to figure out how to time box that portion.
I think you'll as it becomes, more, as you start to get more and more work on your
Sure.
personal side, it will
Yeah.
you will figure it out.
I think the 2 phone thing is going to have to happen because I'm like, I got a Slack message.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, 100%. Well, and this is the personal phone is the old cheapo. Like this
Right.
is, yeah, like I save the ones with bells and whistles for for work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, it's nice because this is the phone that's more engaging. It beeps, it has all the alerts and all of that stuff. But then it's like when I turn it off, it's off. And
Right.
this thing doesn't talk a lot. I turned off all alerts. I turned off everything. It's literally just if I need to text or dial, whatever.
Right.
So,
Right.
and it works for me.
That's pretty cool.
I'd give you the same advice. That maybe at least a technique.
It's good advice. It's good advice. It's something I've never tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. So travel. How much travel are you doing, and or are all of your clients kind of local to you?
So all of my clients are remote.
Okay.
Right? Or all of my work is remote.
Sure.
I have traveled. I've traveled a good bit. I would say for my level of comfort. I think it kind of depends, right? Sometimes a client will require you to travel.
Sure.
Sometimes I'll travel to a client site even on my own dime.
Yeah.
Just to make the
There's
relationship.
Conversations that are important to have face to face.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Well, even just meeting people and doing things, it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's speaking French. They can't tell anyway. But yeah, no, I mean, the client travel, it's, there have been very valuable conversations where I've traveled on my own dime.
Yeah.
And actually, specifically, I remember like earlier this summer, did I tell you about this? That I went to Chicago and I met one of our refinery teams.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And it was, it was just personal travel. I went up there to see family. I just made a day to go out, and I actually went out to the site. So I had one work day.
Yeah.
I went over there, and they brought me around the full refinery. This refinery is the size of a city. I mean, it was wild, and I can't even tell you the scale of this thing, right? But the point was, I never would have known this. So the project that I'm working on, we're helping them change the way they do inspections.
Yeah.
Right. And so on the maintenance side, this is like, okay, well, we need to replace this part in so many, whatever. I didn't realize the scale of the importance of the maintenance work. I mean, maintenance work itself, it's like, okay, yeah, you want to be safe and you don't want to have cracks. You want to replace stuff as it, in good time and
Sure.
the most, in the least expensive way and the most effective way possible, right? I mean, that makes sense in maintenance.
Right.
What I didn't know is that even though this refinery is this large, they change the product that they create every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So for example, they are completely plugged into the trading department. So if trading says, we expect that the futures on diesel are going to be the highest in the next 2 weeks, they completely change the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, now we're just making diesel for 2 weeks. And then, so that changes what they buy, that changes what they sell, that changes how they price. But guess what? Maintenance plays in there, right? Because if we say, well, the diesel line is under maintenance, we can't sell diesel, then that just changes their calculus.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the trading desk is very interested in maintenance schedule because they want to know that we're reliable, number one, and number two, if we can't make a product, they want to be able to get the best prices on the next most valuable thing. Two things came out of that. Number one is like, okay, clearly maintenance in the grand scheme of things is super important for the client. And I could get into that. I could have shows about that. But the other interesting thing is like, and they started doing this back when the Rockefellers were around, right? So this company who brought me on to help with Agile coaching has been doing Agile since the Rockefellers. They just have been calling it something different.
Right.
So I'm like, well, why are you guys cribbing about me asking you what your plans are for the next 2 weeks if you guys change the whole refinery every 2 weeks?
It should be natural, should be native for them.
Yeah. And so like, okay, well then the clear takeaway was like, why don't we just align our sprints to your 2 week cycles and everything makes sense?
Right.
It's like, okay, if I didn't go spend that day out there, on my own
Agreed.
corporate time. Like I never would have known that. And that's just such a stupid tweak. I mean,
I do. So I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I would say retail was my favorite vertical. There's just, I think a lot of retail clients had not realized that they also have to be technology companies. And so still their technology groups were viewed as like a cost center. Right.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened. And then, brick and mortar isn't a thing right now. So now we're going to have to really lean on the technology.
Yeah.
And that was a really fascinating move. Now, so much efficiency is being found in manufacturing.
Sure.
That they're don't tell retail, but now manufacturing is kind of my favorite, just because there's so much that they're catching up on with all of the potentiality that's stored up in the technological advances.
Yeah.
And not just that, but practice, right? Like how they do things is sometimes a huge area of opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, but yes, agreed. So in my last role, one of my clients was a really big manufacturing company, and I just loved them. It was so much, they took so much time to walk us around the factory floor and kind of tell us their why and their how. And it was fascinating, just kind of getting into that world. Recently, I was able to go to Tom, my husband, had family day at
his company.
So they build satellites. And after having toured my client's factory floor and going to their factory floor, I'm like, boy, we could do this and this and this and this and this and this. Yeah. But that's what I mean about bringing that consulting knowledge to potential clients that are, there's everybody's out there solving the same problems, right? They're trying to save money. They're trying to make more money. They're trying to, do good things for their people. They're trying to do good things for the environment, whatever it is, right?
Right.
And so everybody's trying to solve the same big problems. It's just what's the most important, and how can we take best knowledge from the rest of industry and distill it for their particular needs.
Right. Well, and really also it's pulling out like there's always going to be the client specific stuff.
Yeah.
Right. But then if you can rip out the client specific stuff and figure out like, okay, well, this is the generic problem and this was the generic fix. And this is, this is the value that it brings.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, well, then you take that and it can be really across industry. Right. It's like, okay, well, I understand that you're in manufacturing and then you're in retail, for example, but the principles of what we're trying to do don't change.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's really the difference between hiring like a contracting firm, where here's a list of requirements versus a consultant, which is going to get in there and see the problems before you see them.
Right.
That's really the difference.
Right.
I didn't know that when I was a baby contractor. I was like, it's just, here's a whole bunch of line items that have to be delivered.
Right.
But it's very different in the consulting world.
Yeah. Yeah. In consulting, you get paid to actually think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus just, hey, I need you to do a thing for
deliver
me.
the technical things. Yeah.
So it does get blurred. I will tell you, it does get blurred in larger clients where you're independent, where they bring you on as a contractor, but they expect you to think.
And act like a consultant.
Yeah.
I don't care what you call it. I want to do the consulting now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, and a lot of times, like, people say that, and I only bring this up because of this, right? People think staff aug by itself is like a bad word, and it can be in a sense, depending on where you bring in the staff, right?
Right.
Consultants, and this is controversial. I'm going to say it. Consultants by nature, we are all staff aug, except that
to a certain extent.
Well, here's where I'm going with it.
Okay.
Some staff aug is like junior level, like entry level. You're augmenting the staff at an entry level.
Sure.
You bring us in, we're augmenting staff at the senior level. So we are like a pay as you go strategist.
I'm going to have to rethink how I've talked about that in the past now.
Right.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, because they're really.
It is. So you're doing the work of a director or a VP or something like that.
They're bringing you in. They just can't afford. You're a fractional VP.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So then if you present yourself that way,
Uh-huh.
you're going back to your business, right? If you present yourself, I'm a fractional VP, I'm a fractional director, you know, you don't have the budget or the time
Or you may
the
not need one forever.
Correct. You don't need a director of special projects. You need a director of Agile for about 6 months,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And I'm going to come in and I'm going to clean up and boom, you're going to have your action plan and I'm gone, you know? And if you need me again, I'll be here for you.
Point me at a different area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's really cool. So I'm going to completely pivot.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So going back to but what about me, JP?
Of course.
So, so the question is, so tell me about tax time. How do you prep through the year, and what does it look like at the end of the year? Is it a mad scramble? Do you have some elaborate filing system? What do you do?
Generally not. Generally not. So the first year, yes, because I didn't know what I was doing. But I think so. Let's talking about taxes as a solo indie,
Sure.
right? Because if you have employees, it's different. I can't speak to that. But as a solo indie, the first thing you got to figure out is how to pay yourself, right?
Okay.
And so what I've done is that based on your tax structure or whatever, right? I'll leave you to that if you're going to be an S corp or however you're going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you've got to pay yourself, right?
Yeah.
And when you pay yourself, you've got to take out taxes. You've got to do withholding. You've got to do all that stuff, right? So I'm going to say that you have to decide how much you're paying yourself. That is a conversation between you and your CPA. There are a lot of factors that go into how much you're paying yourself. Generally, it's not going to be what you bring in. So if they say you bring in, say, $100,000 a year,
sure,
you're not paying yourself salary $100,000 a year.
Mm-mm.
You're probably paying yourself less, maybe $60,000 a year. I'm generalizing. Okay.
The first time I saw rates for principal consultants, I was like, how am I only making this much? And the companies, well, once you start to realize how, what it takes, what the cost to run a business, it makes more sense why you're not bringing home the 100, you're bringing home the 60.
Correct. Well, I mean, and that's a separate conversation. The reason why principals make, whatever we make, there's also the triangle pyramid or the triangle rate building and consulting. That's a whole different thing, right? But at least in this, if you're a solo, let's just make the assumption you're paying yourself 60, right? Well, you have to pay your payroll taxes on 60 and all of that stuff. You have to file quarterly taxes and all of that stuff. That is a major pain. Okay.
You're not going to lie.
No, it's terrible. But what I have done, because we used to do it we had a nanny that worked for us. We salaried her and we had to do all of that stuff. It was awful.
Right.
So after that experience, I said, never again. I'm going to pay somebody to do it. And so I went to my CPA. I said, will you do this for me? He said, yes, but no. He said, you can pay me to do it, but you don't want to pay me to do it. He said, you need to get a payroll company to do it for you.
Really?
So I have a payroll company, one employee. They cut me one check. It's $50 a month. Not $50 a month, $50 a check. So I only pay myself once a month.
Okay.
They file everything.
Oh, that's the best thing I've ever heard.
Everything.
How many hours do you think that saves you?
Oh gosh, it probably saves me 40 hours a year.
Okay,
Easy.
That's well worth $50 a check.
Yeah. Think about what your daily rate is. If your daily, even if your daily rate's $100, it's like, come on, man. No, it's completely worth it. Yeah. It is completely worth it. I don't have to think about it. They file. It's on. Like if they're late, it's on them. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's number one. Okay. You paid yourself. Okay. All of that should come out of your business checking.
Yes.
Okay. So this is making the assumption you have business checking. So if you don't get it, all your money goes into business checking. You pay yourself out of business checking, right?
Sure.
The next thing that you do, same checking account, at least as a solo, you have like a debit card or something like that that's attached to that, or however you do check, you start to pay for your expenses, your internet, your cell phone, your whatever you're buying as part of your business. Pay with your business. Two reasons for that. Well, number one, it keeps your books clean.
Yes.
Right. But number two, at the end, at tax time, you can take your checking account, register, download it into a CSV, annotate all of your whatever you did, and it sounds like a lot. It's not going to be that much, right? That much annotation. It takes me about 2 hours, to annotate all my spending for the year. Send it to the CPA. The CPA then goes in, okay, this is this, this is this, this is this. They categorize everything for me. I don't know what they do with it, but like business expense, these are all my business expense. These are all my revenues. Boom, give it to the CPA. They make the magic happen.
That's outstanding.
So then that's step 2. Step 3 is the retirement stuff. So one of the things that you can do as an independent is you can have your own 401k, right? Now there's a decision about how much you want to do in 401k versus how much you want to do somewhere else. Like that depends more on your investment strategy than it does anything. The nice thing about 401 is that it gives you a vehicle to write off more of your of that 60K.
Yep.
The amount of taxes that you have to pay is going to be like 40K.
Right.
You get what I mean?
Right.
So, just depending on how much you want to contribute. Do you always contribute the maximum amount? No, you talk to your CPA. There's a level, right? Because at some point, if once it brings you down a tax bracket, for example, then maybe there's not a lot of extra benefit to pour more money into it because you're not really getting that benefit. You could invest it somewhere else.
Sure.
But that's a conversation to have with the CPA also. So if I were you, I would open up a solo 401k. It's called a solo 401k. And that gives you checkbook control of your money within it.
Good.
And I think, and don't quote me on this, I'm not an expert, but the general rule is you can invest in anything in a solo 401k, provided that you don't manage the asset. So you can buy stocks, you can buy Bitcoin, you can buy real estate, you could fund a business, you could fund a startup that's not yours.
Wow.
You could do a lot of things, right?
That's a lot of leeway.
It is. So, and there are 2 things that you can do as a solo. You can contribute to yourself. So you have that 22.5 or whatever it is per year. Also, based on how much you pay yourself, you can give yourself a bonus into the 401k again. So you can, I think there's a limit. You can put up to 60K a year into that 401k.
As a bonus from the company.
To total. So 22 plus 40, depending on how much you pay yourself. But there's a percent, you can only put up to a certain percent. So there's, again, it's a math optimization problem, depending on where you sit in tax bracket.
And this is why you get yourself a good CPA.
That's 100% more because you don't want to figure out that math. I
really don't want to figure that out.
You get somebody to tell you, you say, here are all the tools that I have. If there are more tools that I need, you need to tell me and I'll go get them.
Yeah.
Right. And then you tell me how I pay the least amount of taxes. Right. And I pay my CPA. I probably pay them $3,000 a year.
Yeah.
Because I have multiple businesses, right?
So
yeah, I have 3 businesses. So each business costs, a little bit.
Right.
But, then at the end of the day, it's they save $30,000 to $40,000 in taxes. It's okay, it was worth it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll do that again next year.
That makes a lot of sense. Do they actually take care of the taxes, like the filing and all that? Or do you then go, okay,
they file. We cut the checks.
Okay.
So, so we do at the end of in April or March and April, they'll say, okay, pay this to this person, pay this to this person. And then it's okay, you cry, you write the check and then, but then you look at the statement okay, there's how much you saved in taxes this year versus last year and that kind of thing. So,
that's pretty cool. So it sounds like once you have your team set up, you really kind of have the leeway to focus on the delivery of your business, right?
Yes.
The delivery of your product.
Right.
How much time would you say you spend in a year managing the extracurriculars once you've got your team in place?
Not much. So CPA, very little.
Yeah.
Lawyer, it just depends on your relationship with them, how often you use. I maybe only use my lawyer once or twice a year.
Okay.
So it's not very high touch.
Yeah.
It's going to be much more high touch in the beginning when you're setting up.
Right.
And you're getting your contracts in place and stuff. But then, every now and then you'll hire them to do a contract read or something like that. But, not much. Now, that depends. I have very long-term contracts, in comparison. So if you have a lot of 6-weekers with different companies, then you may be using them more. I can't necessarily speak to that, but that's at least the value, of having somebody that it's local, that you trust, that you've worked with before,
right?
Versus somebody on LegalZoom,
right?
Which
It's fine for the basic stuff.
100%. Yeah.
The initial setup, it's fine.
Yeah.
But
I've got a buddy who has he has a nutrition, like a supplement business or whatever. Right. And for him, I recommend, it's like, no, man, legal Zoom. You don't need, like, you're not doing anything weird. You're not going to have any, any crazy things.
are you doing something weird? Are you doing something weird?
And so it's like, usually it's like B2C, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you're not, you don't have to deal with somebody else's legal department.
Right.
I usually think about it like teams,
Okay.
It's like capture the flag almost, right? Where it's like, okay, they have a team, how big is their team? That do I need to have a team?
Yeah, right.
Right. And so it's like, okay, I have a CPA again that is my teammate against the IRS.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Now, if I have a big company that's my client, they have a legal team. And it's like, well, then I need a teammate.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And a lot of times for his business, it was like, he's B2C directly and he doesn't make the product, right? He's just the sales vehicle. So it's like, he doesn't really have a lot of liability. He just needed that to have the business checking account.
Right.
It's like, okay, bro, just go spend $100 or whatever it is on legal Zoom, knock it out. You're never going to need them again. So you don't need to have a relationship. But I think in our business where you're doing professional services, you have to have somebody that you trust and, that you can hire, fire, and, go out and,
legit
do more stuff with, right?
Cool.
So did that help?
That totally helps. Yeah, that absolutely answers the question. So you're just doing a little bit throughout the year.
I think so.
Just maintenance, good record keeping, and keeping everything separate.
Yeah.
And then it's just about having the right team and making sure they get what they need to do the functions correctly.
The only thing that I've thought about bringing on, I might bring on a bookkeeper, like a fractional bookkeeper, just because now I have 3 and we're thinking about branching out to a 4th business.
Right.
So it's like, okay, maybe it's time to have somebody like actually make sure that the state's getting what they need and, whatever, all these people are getting what they need,
Right.
I don't know that I need to do that yet. Like of all the things I've wanted to cede control of, like the checkbook is one that I've always wanted to just hold on to.
Right.
But now with the 4th one, and it's going to be very transactional, I feel like bringing on that bookkeeping expertise may be something. I don't know. So I don't know how much it would be to maintain that person.
For 4th business or a 4th client?
Business.
Oh, wow.
Business. Yeah.
So,
but yeah, so we'll see. I don't know about that one. I just hired a social media manager though.
Right.
And that is requiring a lot more maintenance. Like, well, not so much maintenance. They ask me a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Like, so on a month they'll say, okay, what do we need our campaign to be this month? And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know. Whatever you think.
Do you find that that's driving business for you?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
It's still too early.
Yeah. I'll be interested to find out.
Yeah. I'm more so just to try to keep a presence.
Yes.
Just because being indie, the one thing that, that is evident to me is that there are the people that I'm competing with have salespeople that are constantly on the ground talking to the clients, finding where the next opportunities are, and I don't necessarily have that. So I'm trying to make more of a pull strategy where if I put some content out there saying what I'm good at or, the things that I'm interested in.
Someone will remember you fondly.
Yeah. And the other thing is if I put it out there, then later, if I come into a conversation where it's like, okay, hey, I've actually talked about that. This is perfect. Here's an episode instead of a white paper. Because whenever I was in, working for somebody else in the consulting business, I hated writing white papers. I'll be honest. We do it because you have to, and it makes sense.
Sure.
But it's just like, oh gosh, like the last thing I want to do with my time is like sit down and write a white paper.
No, I thought I was done when I was done with college, but
no. So instead of white papers, these podcasts are now my white papers. It's like, okay, I've got a show.
This is much better.
Yeah.
This is much better.
Well, you can dig into it. You can get into the nuance of it too.
Sure.
Right.
So. And you get multiple viewpoints on, in a single delivery.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's more fun. I get to hang out with my friend.
Yes. In Canada.
My buddy.
No less, yeah. So I mean, not a lot of maintenance. Most of it is really just focusing on, the delivery stuff.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's if I didn't have the team, I'd be running 10 ways.
Yeah.
And pay somebody. It's worth it.
So how do you know what are the check marks before you actually pull the trigger to go indie? Because it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Like some people are dinks, right? Dual income, no kids. Some people have kids. Some people, their partner makes all the money, whatever it is. Right. How do you like, what are the steps to determine whether or not you're ready? Pull that trigger. I think that's probably going to be my last question.
Well, I would say this, right? There were two things, right? Two questions you need to answer. Can I survive for 6 months without any income?
Right.
So that's a savings account question.
Sure.
Right. Are you can you live through the ups and downs? Okay. So, I mean, that's a very just cut and dry.
It's a math question.
Yeah. You just add up your expenses, multiply by 6, monthly expenses times 6. Do you have that money in the bank? If you do, you're ready. Okay. Check one. Number two, do you have the expertise?
Yes.
Right. Do you have something that you're going to sell? Do you know what that is? Right. And do you have
is there a market for it?
Yeah. And so, and I wouldn't even so much say that it's almost just how do I want to say it? Are you good at something?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because it's and I can tell you, look, I'll tell you, you're ready. You're already ready. You were ready 5 years ago. You were ready 10 years ago. Look, I mean, it's I think a lot of times people overthink being ready.
Yeah.
And so the question to me is always just, do you have some competence in what you want to do? And are you financially able to do so? So part of the financial thing you need to think about is okay, what do I do about health insurance? Right. Because my wife, Katie, she can cover our health insurance. Right. So I can go into, and it doesn't affect the health insurance for the kids or me or her or anything, right?
Tom has awesome insurance.
Perfect. So you've got that checked. If you have the 6 months, the 6 month savings checked, then it's then jump in. A lot of times, and when what I've seen, I'm not the only one to say this. It's you're never ready. Nobody's ever ready. I wasn't ready. Look, we were working together when I got the call, and it's just you just have to when you have the opportunity, the only difference between somebody who's indie and is not is it's just, did you jump on the opportunity that came?
Right.
You're never going to be ready. It's like having kids. You're never ready.
True. Or more poignantly for our friend Jan, whose wedding we are here for.
Cheers.
Yes, you're never ready for any of it.
But no, you got to go. I mean, that's part of it. You have to I'm trying to sing 10 things at once. It's going to be scary.
Yeah.
It is 100% scary. It is it's unknown in a way, but then it's once you get into it, it's all known. It's all stuff that you do.
Already done it for my entire career.
Yeah.
I think, and that's the way of most things, right? Any risk you take is going to feel really scary until you've taken it and you go, oh, well, that wasn't so bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think if financially if you have, look, as parents, as married people, if you have insurance and you have 6 months of savings, you're ready.
Yeah.
Just go for it. Because look, whenever I got the call, and you know this, whenever I got the call, I had no LLC. I had no statements of work. I had no CPA. I had nothing. I didn't have anything. And it was just it was a 1 month sprint to figure it out. I gave Rackspace 1 month.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I said, okay, I'm going to land, because part of it was, I wanted to land my clients too.
Right.
I didn't want to leave them high and dry. But at the same time, I wasn't ready, whenever they called me, so it's okay, well, I'm just spending all my nights and weekends figuring out this thing, And
that's cool.
And
I think my jobby job, my W-2 right now, I love the people so much. I'm going to stick around for a while, but I want my next step to be that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say this. It's if you're wanting to go indie, anybody, not just you, but anybody, you always still have to deliver. It's your W-2 to the best of your ability.
100%.
You're an A100% player all the time, as you always are, right? But then the difference is that you're always looking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or not even always looking, but you're listening.
Sure.
And then, a year or two down the road, if the right opportunity comes, don't pass it by. Just jump on it.
Yeah.
Because you never know when it's going to come. Because I mean, proof positive. I mean, we were, when we were working together, I had no idea. I mean,
Yeah.
I had planned, I think I had just come off of a quarterly business review with one of our big clients, and I was planning, my 6-month sales strategy with
Sure.
them. We were building something big, and that client is still going crazy for our old company, and it's like,
And it's because you did a nice safe landing for your account.
There's that. Good. Yeah. And, but also it was, I mean, they had the work. I knew it.
Yeah.
And, and it was just making sure that you could keep their momentum rolling,
right. Right.
But at the same time, it's like, but now I have this thing, and it's like, it's mine. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Am I gonna, let it go, or am I gonna keep it?
I haven't had that. I haven't ever gotten that call. Yeah. But who knows?
You never know. Who knows? And look, and the other thing is, you don't, like, the call itself will never manifest itself in the way you think it's going to.
Really?
It's just sometimes you're talking to somebody. How did I tell you how the conversation to get my first indie gig?
You told me, but tell me again, because I think it's salient to that.
It was a buddy of mine asking me about a Tesla. He knew I just bought a Model 3 a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Hey man, I'm thinking about buying a Model 3.
I too am a car nerd.
Yeah.
Please
he called me up. He said, "Do you like it?" And I was like, "Yeah, man. Buy it right now. Like, don't hesitate. Just get it." And then it just, it relit that friendship and that relationship. And then, I hung up the phone with him about the Tesla thing. A week later, he's like, "Is there any way you can come back?"
Oh,
are you like, where? What are you talking about? I mean, it was just kind of out of the blue.
Yeah.
And you just never know where those things are going to go. And so,
did you find that you were in a more open place to be offered something like that? Like, do you think that something had changed in your mind, or no? It just hit you out of the blue.
It was just, I mean, I guess maybe the only difference was that I heard it.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of these things happen all the time, and I just didn't pay attention to it. And just that day, that for whatever reason, I was just paying attention. And they're like, okay, because he was talking about doing an MSA with our old company,
right,
and bringing us in as a company. And I was like, okay. He's like, or I said, or can I come in indie? And he said, yeah. Would you do that? And I was like, are you serious? And I was like, oh, well, and then so it was kind of this off the cuff thing. I was like, well, what rate are we talking about? And he's like, I can pay X amount. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. What do you need?
I'm your guy.
Yeah. Like, let's do this.
That's funny. So it wasn't just that it fell in your lap. It was that he was like, is there any way you could come back? And then you framed it in an indie way.
Right.
Yeah. So that's really the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And for reference, people I used to work for was never a client of ours.
Right. Exactly.
We didn't have any sort of agreement with them.
You don't want to do anything shady.
No. No. You don't want to double dip from the same pot.
Right.
Right. But, assuming that that's the case, then,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it came back, and here we are.
Here we are. And now you are teaching the Padawan.
Well, yeah. soon the student will become the teacher.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Man, thank you for taking the time to answer all my questions. And
of course,
I just love seeing your face.
Yes,
like in person,
and without the Zoom,
without the screen. Yeah, without the screen, and the kids run around behind me.
Yes. So no, this has been fun. So we will have to check in again.
Yeah.
When you've kicked off, or if you want to talk about anything else,
sure.
we can do a video one instead. That's kind of chintzy. Or I could drive out to Florida.
Well, the pool is open.
Yes.
Just saying. So come on by. Bring the kids. My kids and JP's kids started a band together.
They sure did.
It's high time for another practice.
Yeah. We need to get them a show.
Get them a gig.
Yeah,
that'd be good.